an original MCM production.
And now I'm going to call on Megan Holbrook, the CEO of Digitalese, to introduce our program. Megan?
Hello. My husband Eric and I moved to Milwaukee in 2000. I have a very strong memory of standing on a street downtown one weekend and not seeing a single person walking around. It wouldn't have been surprising to watch a tumbleweed rolling down the street. That's how empty it felt. But 2000 was the year that John Norquist loosened regulations on sidewalk dining, and soon restaurants were bringing life and energy to the streets and giving diners a reason to come downtown. At the same time, food shows on cable were becoming popular, and people started looking for the new and exciting in their dining choices. By 2007, the concept for Wisconsin Foodie was inked on a bar napkin, and host Kyle Cherek and producer Arthur Ersink began shooting episodes. Wisconsin Foodie, which has been twice nominated for an Emmy, artfully blends food, cooking, and travel while showcasing local businesses, restaurants, purveyors, and farmers, telling their story and helping to promote a local sustainable economy. The show is currently broadcast on PBS across the Midwest. Kyle has also made regular appearances on the Travel Channel and Food Network and is a frequent media contributor to public radio, NPR, and the major TV networks. His widely acclaimed video web series, Chef Talk with Kyle Cherek, features candid, forthright, and often amusing conversations with some of America's most engaging chefs. Kyle regularly hosts forums, cooking demonstrations, and culinary events in an effort to raise people's consciousness about food and sustainability. Kyle's here today to present a stimulating panel of three of Milwaukee's restaurant entrepreneurs: CJ Krawczyk from Pizza Man, Scott Williams from Bartolotta Restaurants, and Scott Schweibel from Collectivo. Thank you, Kyle. You're welcome. Come on up.
Thank you, Megan, and fellow, though I am not, other Rotarians. On a personal note, and gents, for saying yes to this as the summer winds down and we move into fall. On a personal note, I know that the Rotary is responsible for those gorgeous gardens just on the end of the Urban Ecology Center, and they are something that are cherished deeply by our family. And so thank you for your work, those gardens, and other things you do in the community. I wanted to ask these three gentlemen here specifically, and I want to elaborate a little bit on them so that you have a sense of why I pulled together this panel. When Megan initially asked me if I would speak, I thought that our current political climate is full of one voice or another talking about what they think they know, and we could use a little bit more of a myriad of voices talking about something that is important to our city, which I consider it's culinary health. On the far end, Scott Williams, who I've known for over a decade, is a unit manager for Bartolotta and one of the point folks for the Rumpus Room concept when it was first developed. And that concept was developed specifically to bring in essentially the millennial set and get them used to the Bartolotta experience within its hospitality. CJ Kravchuk, just to his left, is both a partner in Pizza Man, but also a partner in Kravit, Havel, and Kravchuk. And so he is tasked on two fronts. One, bringing in the best and the brightest millennial associates to work at his law firm and stay here, and then also with a concept that has been re-enlivened, which first began in 1976 in the expanding of Pizza Man. Just to CJ's left is Scott Schwabel, who is the director of branding, marketing, and retail for Collectivo, a little coffee shop you may have heard of. Coffee, I thought, was most important because it's really become, across the culinary mindset, a harbinger of cool, and how that relates and how that quick experience of coffee relates to that consumer experience really says everything about, I think, where a city is going. So, a few quick remarks. As a culinary historian, I'm constantly interested in the way food shapes us, our bodies and our culture, our economies, our built environment and geography. In the past decade, dining has, like the glowing apple on your tipped-up laptop screen, once operated as a moniker of cool. Ordering a cortado instead of a latte, or sipping the correct craft cocktail, or searching out the most legit banh mi sandwich are now their own form of recreation and cultural panache. This has never been the case in our country's history. And it's never been more true that specifically one demographic, the millennials, pursue this as a form of recreation. Consider these facts. For the first time in recorded history, Americans are spending more at bars and restaurants, $54 billion in 2015, than they are on groceries, $52 billion. And millennials, by all indications, are leading the charge. In 2012, New York Magazine published an article, and I love the title of this article, "When did young people start spending 25% of their paychecks on pickled lamb's tongues?" For a city to retract, this is U.S. News and World Report about a year and a half ago. For a city to attract and retain some of the best and brightest of millennial talent, it is now understood by CEOs and recruiters alike that a city must have a vibrant culinary culture. This is perhaps even more important than engaging housing options. No offense to you developers here. Sports recreation opportunities. Love the Bucks and the Brewers. Let's not. Yep. And the arts, which personally sort of hits me, even as a foodie. So, gentlemen, does anyone want to cue this off? And I'm going to sit down, or I've got specific questions for you.
I'll start. This is an interesting topic for my affiliation with Pizza Man because we kind of bridged, I think, the divide of when the world changed. When the fire occurred at Pizza Man in 2010, I think the culinary culture in Milwaukee was a lot different. And when we started to discuss bringing it back 3 or 4 years later, we thought, well, we already had a formula that would work. Pizza Man had been in business for 3 decades. When you're involved with a business where people were literally weeping in the streets as it burned down, you have some confidence that people are going to come out and want to relive that nostalgia. But what we realized when we were starting to meet and to work on the concept is that the world had changed significantly in those 3 or 4 years. And not to speak ill of the heritage of Pizza Man, but some of the offerings of the old Pizza Man weren't probably going to cut it, we realized early on in tastings and in concept in the new world. Our prospective customers and diners, their tastes had changed. What they were looking for in an experience had changed. And in order to meet those trends, old Pizza Man had to come back and pay service to the nostalgia, but it needed to reinvent itself as well. And nowadays, we still sell as many Pizza Man specials and cheesemos as ever, but now we have a segment of diner who comes in and is more interested in hearing about what our specials are. They're more interested in ordering squash blossoms than maybe they are in ordering fried mozzarella. If we have an interesting cut of meat from a farm that we have partnered with, and there is a limited number of quantities, almost regardless of price point, those things sell. And we have realized that maybe even more so than we do now, we need to continue to bend to the culture. We need to continue to bend to the changes in what we're seeing in the area. So if you would go into a time capsule and go to Pizza Man even in the early aughts and look at our menu and then go there today, it's night and day. We do honor the history of it, but we have changed a lot. We have handmade pastas. All of our ingredients are now locally sourced. Our chef's brother owns a farm in New Glarus, which has become really a hub for the breadbasket of the state. All of our ingredients come from there. And that's not us just doing it because we think our customers are demanding that we change in that way. And it's been stark, and it's been also very fun to be part of.
Yeah.
I've been involved at Lake Park Bistro, who I've seen a lot of these faces at before, for going almost 18 years now. And we've seen a change as well of people wanting to try different things, to do different things, to eat different things. When we opened the restaurant, the menu was in English, and then we switched it to French because we wanted it to be more authentic. We have something that we can latch onto, which is the Frenchness of the restaurant, that makes it as interesting as latching onto a farm or a really great chef. Lake Park is one of those restaurants that it really, as much as I love it, doesn't matter who the chef is, although I've had great ones. It is an experience, and it's our job to maintain that and keep it going. And we have to usher in the younger set to that. And through that, like you said earlier, a lot of that is opening restaurants that are more acceptable to them, financially, basically.
So how did the Rumpus concept work for that? I know, and this is in the words of Joe and Paul, it was a reach out to, and the discussions have been happening through arts. I mean, the symphony went through, there's all sorts of, we need to acclimatize the folks that wouldn't normally come to our locations to get used to our manner of hospitality, of our arts, of our experience, what have you. How did that work, and what adjustments did you have to make?
Well, we went hard after it right away. With a really intense beverage program, beer program, cocktail program, but we realized the restaurant business at the end of the day is really about location, location, location. And our location being on Water Street right across from the Performing Arts Center made a difference to our clientele. So then we have to try to make everyone happy, right? And then sometimes you fall into that trap of if you try to make everyone happy, you make no one happy. So we had to stick to what we felt was honest and true to what our vision was, yet tweak it so somebody who was going to the theater didn't feel like they were going to eat at a restaurant that had, what did you reference earlier, pickled lamb's tongue?
Yeah.
Right. We wanted to make sure that they could still get a nice piece of salmon, a burger, or maybe something a little bit different. And then you have to listen to your customers. You have to give them what they're asking for. And if they're asking for things that are different, give it to them. If they're asking for things that are familiar, you need to give them those. So
this, Scott, I know you have some insights, but my first question is for you, specifically with Collectivo. You, of everyone here, well, aside from me with television and that we're public television, but you have to have the broadest arms out, right? Everybody drinks coffee, and most of us will drink it until our grave. So when they come into a Collectivo cafe, it can't be too singular in the experience, lest they be put off and make one of the many, many, many other choices out there, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you struggle that, but then also maintain the cool factor for the early adapters, and not that all millennials are cool, but most of them think they are. So how do you attract that element?
Thank you. As a company and a brand that sort of was established before the millennial, can everybody hear me? Before the millennial set was actually a consumer, we started with this idea that had to do with storytelling. We think it's kind of an internal or eternal position for a brand. And the other premise that the company was started on was we wanted, we designed them to be amenities to their community, but they needed to be very accessible for anybody. So whether you huck up on a skateboard or you roll in with a Benz or bike, or you're a mom with kids, or you're an aficionado that, sort of understands food at a deeper level. Coffee sort of is that one beverage that can thread a lot of those points of interest. So we've always, and I guess I'm also the benefit, we employ a lot of millennials, as well as we're seeking to have them continue on the ride with us as a company. So I see both dynamics of having them be our consumer as well as our employee base. So for us, we've just kind of stuck to our guns in terms of we've wanted to maintain this funky edge that we think we use art as a way to inspire, and we think art, once again, is also an eternal pursuit, even though I think your subject or your research says that that's declining. We think of it as a way to sort of build personality without alienating people. I also tell people I have marketing in my sort of responsibility, but that's a pretty loose term in our organization, partially because, one, with millennials, their radar is highly sensitized, and so you don't want to market to them. You want to attract them, and we've always used what we do. Coffee is the epicenter of our brand, but we've sought when we ventured into bakery and then food to sort of do it in our simple way, but have, as Scott mentioned, there's an authentic component to that. So we try to just maintain our personality and hope that there's an attractiveness, rather than, if you're marketers, the attention economy or the attraction economy. And forever, this country was built sort of on the attention economy of advertisements and outward-facing messages. And we sort of speak a little more softly and try to create things that are of interest and are more discovered. So if you're in our place and, there's a little detail you can uncover. So that's sort of how we approach it. Hopefully that answers your question.
Do any of you within your various organizations have specific discussions about the millennials, or is it really just service-oriented and experience? Is that, I think there's too much buzz to be candid about, gosh, we've got to turn them on, we've got to get them engaged, we've got to have them living here, we've got to, I think they sort of complain too much and should work a little harder, personally. But
long live Gen X.
Yeah. We were having a discussion. We were having, the two Scots and I, just before CJ arrived, we were having a discussion in the hallway as so many of you were walking by putting pressure on us saying, we can't wait to hear you, that by the end I thought, God, I hope we don't let them down. But about why there's so little discussion about Gen X, and I think you said it's because we didn't complain. We didn't make as much noise, so there just isn't that much attention on us.
Here's the keys. The peanut butter's in the cabinet. I'll
right,
see you at 5.
Right. Figure it out and do your own laundry. But in all seriousness, is there ever discussions within your organizations to put energy into attracting them? And the follow-up question or response, you can take either of these, is I know in the restaurant world, whether it be coffee or whether it be high fine dining, it's different than the business world. You are literally always training them to leave in the restaurant world. You are giving them experiences and skill set on your payroll, and they are inevitably, there are very few that stay as what we would call lifers, inevitably leave to another restaurant where the grass is greener, open up their own restaurant, go and work for another chef that they can learn an acumen from, another cocktail maker, another sommelier, etc., another barista, that sort of thing. So one, how do you counterbalance that with the short attention span that I think it's fair we can place upon millennials? And two, do you have discussions within your groups of, we need to get them here because once they are acclimatized to our experience, they'll come back. It is human nature. We do like consistency. So, go ahead, gents.
Go ahead.
Sure. So, one of the things about millennials that we realized, we always paid attention to orientation, is essentially what we called it, for new employees. And within the last 3 to 4 years, we've spent a lot more time and energy in recrafting how we onboard, I guess, our employees. And the one thing that, I think millennials, this is all sort of classic marketing, millennials are interested in higher order issues. They're interested in sense of belonging. They're interested in self-fulfillment or self-awareness. And some of that comes with just putting time in the saddle with them. So we used to do an orientation program that was about an hour long, where they would sit down with one of the 3 original founders of the company who still participate in this today. But it's now moved into a multi-day orientation program where we spend time with them trying to help them understand, one, how the business works, and actually, that every dollar in doesn't just go someplace else, but there's actually a meaning to it. And well, basically 70 cents of those dollars have to go kind of feed the machine. And then with the 30 cents that you're left with, how do you invest that communally? How do you make more of an engagement with your customers and the places you do business with? We train them on food. We obviously have to train them on coffee. There's a skill behind the counter, but we talk to them about the mission and discipline of our organization beyond the products that we sell and when we open the doors every day. So and what we've found is we were having a retention problem. So it wasn't just about money. It was about people understanding how their time with us, because we're for sure an organization that employs people for a stop along their journey, even though you can have a legitimate career in coffee. I guess I represent that. But they wanted more. They wanted to feel good about where they came to work every day. And even though I think we're pretty transparent about that, there's a lot of things we didn't talk about that we did that we realized had value. And statistically, I can say that it's worked. Our retention rates have gone up even in the face of the economy has come back, and people who work for us that maybe the jobs weren't there, they've decided that they want to hang around. So that's one aspect that we did.
I think Scott covered the internal looking at millennials. We also hire a lot. We try to foster a sense of family. We have a family meal every night. We feed the staff that comes in. We use that opportunity to talk to them about the specials, allow them to taste the food, allow them to taste the wine. That actually comes from Zach's time in the Bartolotta organization, frankly. We find that team building is something that they respond to even more fundamentally than some of our more veteran and seasoned employees. A lot of them will routinely say to us, "I can't believe we sit down and you feed us every day, and we talk about things. My last 3 jobs in service were a lot different, and I felt like much more of a fungible commodity." That's not a big investment to make every day, but we find that it really moves the needle. Looking outwards at the millennials we're trying to bring to the restaurant, let's talk about social media, let's talk about phones, let's talk about taking pictures of food while we're doing it. These things have all come to be kind of a punchline sometimes about, why don't they just eat their food? Why are they taking pictures of it? They don't get it. Live in the moment. I have a different take on that. I think there's something kind of beautiful in the way millennials experience what they're doing, the way they document it. I don't think it's all narcissism when they do that, but there is this kind of social zeitgeist that they're part of that is a primary driver for why they come out and are willing to buy pickled lamb's tongue, or why they're willing to try things that are special or different. They're much more focused on experiences. They're much more focused on spending their money doing things than accumulating things. And I find that those pictures are a way for them to capture those experiences. If they're going to invest in them, why not take a snapshot and remind yourself of what you've done and what a great night that was. Some of you might know this, some of you might not know this. Facebook now will lob you your memories every year of what you were doing at this time, and there's other phone apps that will do that. So they get to relive those nights. They get to remember that on this night, on a Thursday, they went out for their friends' going away party, and they had that food and they drank that wine, and it will bring a smile to their face. So from our marketing perspective, we want to tap into that zeitgeist. We want to be part of their thinking and part of those experiences. We don't want to shun them. I think there is some savvy in making it a safe space for those types of thinking and to engage them in those platforms, because if you're in their mind and you're on their thinking, then that will be a place that they will come and want to visit and want to have those experiences.
We're just waiting for them to be 40. There's some truth. I mean, I say that in jest, obviously, but there is some truth in that. And that at our fine dining restaurants, I mean, it's hard to market to somebody who's 25 that wants to spend, a good portion of their income having dinner at Lake Park or Ristorante or Bacchus or Harbor House or these really great restaurants. So thus the Rumpus Room philosophy or North Point or any of, we want to make sure that they get introduced at a younger age to the brand, and then we'll grow into those restaurants is hopefully what happens. With regards to them as employees, not that I'm over millennials, but I'm hiring kids that were born in 2000. I don't even think they're millennials anymore. I mean, I think that's a whole different generation. Right. And the millennials were no different, I think, than so many people from my generation and other generations. In the restaurant business specifically, we tend to go to people who maybe aren't fit for other jobs or are the time constraints of the job don't work for them. So we've always kind of had misfits or people with odd schedules or demanding. And it didn't really affect me much as a manager. More so it affected me as a consumer, because as a manager, you always had to deal with people having very specific needs in the restaurant business and dealing with people that maybe don't fit the norm in a lot of other businesses. So I'm moving on to Generation Y, is it now?
Z?
Z, Y, I don't know.
Yeah. Those kids?
Those kids.
This is probably my most delightful moment in this, because I'm just going to ask this last question, then we could turn 2 questions from all of you. But I'm asked this all the time, so this is my delight to turn to all of you and have you answer. Where do you think in the next 10, 15 years Milwaukee's culinary scene is going? What do you think will happen next? Because I'm tired of answering it, and I'm so glad you can all answer it now.
Where's coffee going?
Where's coffee going?
It's not going away. I'm sure it's going to continue to grow in terms of competition and place. I mean, for us, we've always been urban creatures. We've always believed in sort of the city of Milwaukee, and we believe that the culture of the city is going to continue to rise. There's lots of great signs for that. I think, to the points that you've heard today, the generations are going to continue to be experience driven. We are so interconnected globally via technology that you already look in the bigger cities. The apartments that they're building for the younger, they're micro nano units, because they understand that it's not about accumulating things, it's about accumulating experiences. So I think that Milwaukee will probably eventually start to move in that direction. We're fans of this city, and we feel like it's never been more poised to have its moment. You see sort of some of these other secondary markets that are all enjoying these wonderful revolutions of alt art, commerce, culture, like the Portlands of the world or the Austins of the world. And so we're bullish on what's going to happen, and I think you're going to see a continued evolution of the food as people come up through the ranks and have great training or great more established relationships to help them build their career and learn. There's lots of vacancy here, and there's lots of room. So
CJ and then Scott.
I think if you look at what's happening in food as a business cycle, we're at a really interesting point. For many years, there was one pizza man, and then there was one Cafe Hollander, and then there was one Bel Air Cantina, some of these new places. And now there are multiples. You're seeing some of these businesses scale. I mean, for years, there was Lake Park Bistro and Ristorante, and then there was Bacchus. And how many now, Scott? 12, 14?
15 to 19, depending on how you count.
So we're in a place now where once you have kind of proof of concept, or once you have an organization that has proven a competency, you try to do what businesses do and scale it and leverage it. And there can be growing pains with that. We could see a saturation of the same sort of place in every single neighborhood, where Grafton starts to look like Delafield, starts to look like Oak Creek. It's really on the organizations to preserve their mission, to execute their food with the same excellence at the original flagship place. And if that doesn't happen, that will be a waste of resources. That will be a problem. What you want to see is some of the successful places grow up and expand, and not stifle the soil for the next generation of really interesting chefs, of which there are a lot of them. Watch Kyle's Chef Talk and you'll see who is. We want to make sure that it remains an attractive place for the new people to be able to get a foothold. And that's something we have to watch for, that the vibrant culinary culture we have now doesn't get crowded out by a handful of successful operators opening their second and third and fourth restaurants.
To kind of piggyback on what you said, I think that what we've done is not open to the same restaurant, so we're doing different things for that reason. I think there is some scalability to some really great concepts that we can share around town, but you can only have one Lake Park Bistro. You can only have one Ristorante. Yeah. That's based on the location. And to go back to your original question, where do I think it's going? I think it's coming home. I think when the Carl Roch's was bought and remodeled, I think that Milwaukee wants to go back to where it was. In a sense, you have to own where you're from. We don't want to be Portland. We don't want to be Austin. We want to be Milwaukee. And to do that, we have to look back to see where we came from and then improve upon it. So what does that mean? That means opening Pizza Man. That means, having this great coffee company that really was cool way before coffee was cool, right? Joe opening a fine dining French restaurant 20 years ago. That's crazy thinking. And we need to give an environment where these kids can think as crazy as we did, right? And can succeed at it, and give them the opportunity and the props to know that we've got their back and they have to try and stay here. It's a great town. It's got lots of problems. We all know that. But stay and be part of the solution. And I think food is part of that solution.
Yeah. For my two, I don't think it would be fair to offer that up and say that I'm asked this all the time. So I will give you my crystal ball prognosis. Echoing most of what all of you have said, I think, and I tend to look at these things. I host this television show on PBS, but really when I wake up in the morning, I'm a culinary historian, and then I have a television show. And I try to tell the stories of the chefs through that video series that I do with Chef Talk. What I think is happening nationally and will also echo through Milwaukee are two things. The trend in the last 6 to 8 years have been rustic and authentic and earthy, farmy places. What I'm seeing nationally right now, Bon Appetit just released their list of the top 15 new up-and-coming restaurants in America, and they all have what I would call an Ivy League or a blue blood aesthetic and name. So we're moving towards, I think, a new expression of crisp, but more settled down fine dining. I think it's the backlash to the mason jars ad nauseum and lots of food on boards which I think is terrific. I adore that rustic style of eating, but 20 years ago, if that had appeared, you would have wondered, is this board clean? And now it's de rigueur within trend, and I think it's terrific. I embrace all of it, but I think we're going to move in, more toward the Limoges China feeling, not the actual stuff, in as a national trend.
That's okay. It's great China.
Right. Yeah. It's just the food costs. And I agree with all of you in the reinvestment in Milwaukee. I think Carl Roch is a perfect red herring for that sort of thing. I think the city will continue, and its millennials that are both from here and that are coming here to fall in love with the city and want to explore the Carl Roches, the El Rey's, the Pete's Produce, the et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's and we can all be very proud, a deep, deep, deep well. And I think we're legitimately poised, and then I'll get off the sort of crystal ball soapbox, to explore that as a Midwestern city with a farming heritage nearby, not unlike certain cities in the South are and have been exploring and exploiting both sides of that coin for our dining pleasure. And one last thing, I think we've got about 4 more years of talented chefs graduating from wherever and opening up the circa 1880s and the Ardents, et cetera. And then I think we deplete that crowd for a while. But that's fine because we are in the midst of a restaurant bubble. And you're all part of it,
Yes.
which is great. But being solid, practical Midwesterners, I think we'll just settle into ourselves as opposed to pop, which is good. So, any questions? Yes, sir.
I was wondering about social media and commenting specifically. What's your guys' opinion on the Yelps and the Open Table, the comments? Do you find that you should respond to negative reviews, that you should ignore them? Just overall, I mean, it affects. I know it affects how I pick where I'm going to go for dinner, what the star ratings are, or whatever. How do you guys respond to that?
So the question is relative to social media and the Yelps of the world and so forth. When there's negative reviews, how do these folks respond to them or not? What do you do with that experience?
It depends on how realistic the comment is. I mean, sometimes they're just so overblown that you just kind of ignore them. But the ones that you find truth in, it's like panning for gold. In every pan, there's a little nugget of truth there. And you want to exploit that. So we have somebody dedicated at our offices on McKinley that basically that's all she does, is sifts through social media, finds problems, and then we respond to those people because we find it important. Now, do we bat 1,000? Obviously, no. I mean, of course we're going to miss some. But the philosophy is absolutely we want to try, we want to reach out to those people to find out what the problem was because, and really, in every complaint, there's something to be fixed, regardless of how it's poised, delivered, said. You have to find that nugget of truth, and then you need to own it and fix it.
We do the same thing. We have a dedicated person that responds. One thing I would say about those sites in general is some smart person is going to come up with a new hub where there's a filter and people have access to real meaningful experienced reviews as opposed to just everybody in kind of a democratic way posting an outsized negative response to something that a lot of times is a black swan that isn't systemic at all. We had to really, you have to teach your people to have some Kevlar on and let those things roll down their back because there's nothing in a lot of those instances we could have done about it. But we do try to take things away. We don't try to chase that rabbit too far away from kind of our sweet spot, though. We have somebody, the tone is professional, the customer is always right. We never try to engage them in well, what about this? Did you try that? None of that. But we don't find those places to be something that we can A, control particularly well, or B, we think that there's people who can see those reviews that don't necessarily have the ring of truth to them, and those that there's things that are actually that we need to remedy. But it's a source of frustration for sure.
It hurts. It really hurts some days. You pour your heart and soul 60, 70 hours a week into something, and then you read a comment, and this person it just hurts. And it's hard. It's hard. I mean, NPR just closed their comment section. I mean, if that says something, is that online trolling, I think, hit the restaurant business first, to be honest with you, because it's so very personal. It's something you put in yourself that we got it first, and now the rest of the world is kind of having to deal with it, and it's not great some days.
Has a Cosmo Kramer ever threatened to sue Collectivo for the coffee being too hot?
Oh, sure. We've had all sorts of moments. I am, when I spoke earlier about the orientation program that we do, so I spend an hour with all of our new hires, and I actually tell them that we're sort of old school when it comes to social media because we talk to people every day across the counter. So our business is a little bit different than the destination dining world that, we're a part of every, ideally if we've won your heart, you're a good customer of ours multiple times a week because, our products is more of a simple delight. But I talk to them about the value of our brand first, and I think if you can build a strong brand, you can sort of overcome the vocal minority, which are the trolls that are online. We too have someone who manages sort of our social and digital sort of properties and conversation channels, and we'll respond to things when there actually is something to potentially respond to. We also feel like we've built a pretty loyal customer base, and so we get direct comments daily. You know, I mean, you open your door and new problems roll in every day. So I talk to them about the sort of power of what your smile and your engagement is with a customer across the counter every day. So we spend a lot more energy on that than we do on the thing, because you know what these guys are saying, you can't control it. What you hope is that you've delighted people enough that vocal sort of minority is eventually going to get drowned out. But we don't chase a lot of the fringe comments. If it's something genuine, we will track it down and try to make it right. But yeah, no, for us, we focus more on, you know, eye to eye across the table. But our business is a little bit different. So.
There was another question. Yes, ma'am, in the yellow. So the question is, Collectivo, formerly known, like our late beloved Prince, formerly known as Altera, and that branding transition and what, well, I don't really know how to encapsulate. Was there a pushback? What was the experience like? I have to say personally, I was very flattered that Scott had put me into one of the focus groups when they announced, and we had to sign, non-disclosure forms that this was in the offing, and I think it's okay now. I came home to then my girlfriend, now my wife, and said, "Oh my God! I mean, I signed something, but I don't know how. I can't sleep with this." So anyway, I broke that form, just so you know. Yeah, hope we're still friends. Yeah.
Altera is a wonderful part of our history. It'll never go away. Change is hard. We saw it as a wonderful opportunity after 20 years to sort of craft the next chapter of the company. I can honestly say that we feel like it's in the rearview mirror, that some people who maybe have told me they'll never call it Collectivo now find themselves calling it Collectivo. For us, it's just, we're going to continue to try to do our best work. There are people who probably will maybe never say the new name, but in the set that we're talking about today, they were on it in a second. Change was no problem for them. We were very strategic in how we communicated to them. We were strategic in how we communicated to all of our customers, from our longer, sort of more established customers all the way down to our millennials. I actually leaned really hard on the younger, more technology-driven consumer to help tell the story. So for us, business is good. We feel good about the brand. We adore our history of who we were, and we're sort of having a good time with, because nothing really changed except for the name. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, sir.
Can you talk a little bit about pricing and whether you use it to make your establishments exclusive to a specific audience, or try to make it more inclusive and available to a broader range of people? I think, Scott, you talked a little bit about growing through your product, that you're a broader spectrum, but is your goal to get as many people, or to have a more specific select audience as you price your product and in your experiences?
I think Scott and I probably have much different answers to this question. One of the great challenges of a restaurant like Pizza Man, especially the 2.0 version, is you are in a constant push and pull between people who are going to come in and have a pitcher of beer and a Pizza Man special, and then somebody who might come in and order a $250 bottle of wine, and to have offerings that meet it. Our strategic objective is to try not to please everyone, but to please as many people as we can within that, the offerings we have on our menu. Our menu is pretty expansive. It's maybe a little bit larger than we want it to be at the time being, but part of that is dealing exactly with that. We want to kind of have low art and high art harmonized on the same menu, so truly Pizza Man is a proletariat restaurant. Everybody who comes in, there's something for everyone. And pricing is a big part of that. Regardless of the quality of the ingredient, regardless of where it came from and how much it costs to procure, or how much more expensive it is to make fresh pasta than it is to make dried pasta. Some people just have an idea about how much a certain dish should cost. And when we came back, there was some calibration of our pricing, and we made some people mad. And that's just part of the friction cost, I think, of trying the high wire act that we do. But pricing is something we scrutinize and that we really obsess over to find that sweet spot.
I completely agree with you. We're not on the different side of the coin there. What makes it easy in the fine dining restaurants is that I can put a piece of foie gras in front of somebody, or I can put a Dover sole or a really great piece of skate, and there's no point of reference, right? It's not as if you're comparing apples to apples here. I'm giving you a product, and I guarantee you I'm not gouging you for it, because the product is expensive, the talent pool it takes to produce it is expensive, the building itself isn't cheap, so I have to charge what I charge to do certain things. Now the other side of that is when Milwaukee, being a coupon-driven market, they know what they want, they know how to get it, right? And you have to. There are certain food items that are hard to play in, and he's got one of the hardest: pizza, hamburgers. Those are things that everybody has an opinion on and everybody loves. I could go around to every single person in this room. You can tell me your favorite pizza in Milwaukee. It might not be Pizzeria Pickled, or it might not be Pizza Man, but you have a favorite. And to switch that is almost impossible. We just have to make something that we're proud of, and hopefully you see it as something that is different, interesting, and worth spending the money on. Because it's not going to be exactly what you want. It's kind of like eggs, Everybody can cook eggs, right? You can cook eggs at home, but it's hard to charge for them in a restaurant. You're like, I paid $8 for eggs and toast? Right? I can make eggs at home. Well, there's other things that go along with it. So it's something we talk about every day. And I know that he talks about it every day. I know his chef talks about it every day. We talk about it every day. And it's really important because we don't want to be perceived as, we want to be perceived as value. That does not have a relationship to how much it costs. We want you to come to Lake Park and know that $60, $75 you spent is worth it. And I don't want you to walk away thinking it wasn't worth it. And you could say the same thing for a pizza or a hamburger or a cup of coffee. You just want to make sure that it has value.
One thing I'll say about millennials on that score is that they do tend to be a little bit more aware of and willing to accept higher price points when they understand where the product is and it's something that they want. The tug of wars over price tend to be with our older patrons. The younger folks are a little better educated on how much these things cost and what they can expect to pay.
Yeah. By the way, toast is going to be a trend, and I'm not kidding. There was a point when we would have said a $14 burger. I'll never believe that, and we're going to pay for bottled water every day. Give it probably 18 months. You're going to see toast on menus.
Great. Thank you. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today for this entertaining and enlightening program.
An MCM production.